My name is Shayok. I live in White Plains, New York.
Can you give me an example of what the COVID-19 experience has been like for you and your loved ones?
Well, very recently we were kind of very dramatically impacted, and it's actually still going on. My in-laws were infected with COVID, and they live in India. And so my wife, she just had to go a couple of days ago. She flew to India and to take care of them. So and it's like fairly it's so now I'm here in my role as a single father taking care of my daughter. And obviously we're also concerned that my wife should not get COVID in the process of taking care, and just the process of even for people like us who have the resources to like fly to another country to take care of loved ones. It's still challenging. You just find out at the last moment what is the exact kind of test that you have to take in 72 hours before to be allowed on the plane. All right. So it was just the process of getting there is pretty stressful. And as you know, when people are infected with COVID and they're hospitalized, you cannot even like go see them. So my wife is stuck in a hotel and kind of trying to keep tabs of on her father's treatment, all the while also kind of trying. I mean, it's not just her father, it's also her mother and her uncle, who they all live together. They've all been infected, and unfortunately the other two, they're not that badly, and so they've come home. And now it's a challenge, like my wife go home and live with them? Because even though they've been safe to be let out of the hospital, they may still be they may still be contagious. So you are in the same city as your loved one, like your father is in the hospital, your mother is at home, and you are in a hotel. It's just the emotional impact of it is just way too much. Yeah, that's just how we've been impacted very, very recently.
Shayok, I'm really sorry to hear that, and I do hope that your father-in-law improves real quickly. I know that's very emotional for you and your daughter, and of course your wife. Very sorry to hear. Do you think that there is any connection between the Black Lives Matter uprisings, the COVID-19 pandemic, to climate change and environmental justice?
I mean, I think all of this is based on how our economic system is like. So our economic system uh, depends on producing the maximum amount of stuff for the minimum amount of dollars. So and whenever when you have to do that, that the exploitation is a natural result of that. So the world is now all interconnected, which we used to hear in the 90s. Oh, it's a great thing, the earth is flat, the world is so interconnected. But this has actually made our world more fragile. We've seen that the mortgage crisis spread from the United States to Europe. Now, like, what would have been a local epidemic, these things happen in one country, is now spreading all over the world through these crazy airplane flights, right? That, I mean, like in Europe, people these days, they take like these Ryanair and EasyJet like they're taking a bus. I mean, there are direct nonstop flights from Wuhan to Milan to support the fast fashion industry. So this is all a consequence of this insane tendency that we have to produce the maximum amount of things for the minimum amount of dollars. So these are all interconnected. So unless we change our economic system, we cannot solve any of these problems. We will continue to exploit people. We will continue to exploit the earth.
Right. Did you personally get a chance to partake in any of the Black Lives Matter protests?
Uh, uh, when the peak of the movement was going on, no, I was just too scared to get COVID. But just the other day, I was able to go to a climate march, which was a climate and a racial justice march, and we marched down Broadway from Columbus Circle, which was also a very interestingly named place, Columbus Circle, to Times Square. So that was a good event to be a part of. It was like there was a movement for Black Lives. There was XR. There was Divest New York. There was a very good representation.
I actually was there, so I'm sorry I didn't see
Oh,
you.
really? I didn't see you either.
How do you envision New York recovering from this period?
I mean, that's like it's almost, I would like to split it into two. Like how would I wish New York recovered, and how I'm afraid New York is going to recover. These are two different things. And how I'm afraid New York is going to recover is how New York got COVID. It was not that much of a surprise, right? China suffered, Europe suffered, so this was on the way. But the people who run our systems, the people who run our government, people who run our industry, they want to persist with business as usual, to the extent that they can. So they're going to ignore all these problems like COVID. So I'm afraid the recovery is going to happen just like that. When COVID goes away, people will say, boom, okay, business as usual. Let's go back to pretending like we can go back to life as it was a year ago or 2 years ago. And so I don't think any of the radical changes that are needed will actually happen.
Just give me a little taste of some of the things that you think might help us.
We would have to, localize our economies. That's the most important thing we need to do. We need to grow our food much more locally. We need to process our waste streams much more locally. People have to be much more involved in growing their own food. So once you do that, like, people are much more directly engaged in producing what they need for their day-to-day lives. So that way you have food security, you have job security, you have less pollution, you have less dependence on like far away places, and you have less dependence on huge amounts of capital and fossil fuels. So uh, that's how I wish the recovery would happen, is through a much more localized, a much more human scale in economy.
Great. And my last question to you is, what constitutes a good job?
So a job that does not require you to exploit other people, and that job does not leave you feel exploited. That's a good job.
So I want to say thank you very much for participating in the New York Renew Story-Based Project.